let's dive in. You ready to go deep on a band?
Always.
So we're talking the S.O.S. band. I feel like everyone knows their hits, but I think there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
Yeah, take your time, do it right is a classic.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to their journey, right? I mean, you've got iconic producers and a legacy that still echoes in music today. It's pretty fascinating.
That's what I love about these deep dives. You always uncover these hidden gems about artists you thought you knew. So let's set the scene for this one. We're talking late 70s, early 80s, that kind of vibe. Where does this story even begin?
Right. Picture Atlanta, Georgia, 1977, right?
Yeah.
A group called Sounds of Success is just getting going. And, Atlanta's always been a musical melting pot, right? So many different styles and influences. But this group, they were about to add their own unique flavor.
Okay, Sounds of Success. I like it. It's got that old school cool vibe to it. But we know them as the S.O.S. band, right? So was that like a name change or just a shortening?
A little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
They shortened it, yeah. But it kind of reflects their evolving sound. And at the heart of that sound was Mary Davis, their lead singer.
Oh, Mary Davis. Right, yeah. That voice is pure magic. Now, every band has its origin story, right?
Yeah.
What were those early years like for them? Were they like an overnight success, or was it a bit more of a grind?
Oh, definitely a grind. Like a lot of artists starting out, it was, playing gigs, honing their sound. They were paying their dues, putting in the work. But here's the thing, though. They were persistent.
Yeah.
And that persistence, that really paid off in a way that changed everything for them.
Okay, so what was that turning point? Like, what was that moment where everything clicked?
In 1980, they release Take Your Time,
Yeah.
Do It Right.
Yeah.
And this song, produced by Sajidi Abdullah, written by Jason Bryant, wasn't just a hit. It was a phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
Like it blew up.
Dude, that bass line, those vocals, I mean, it's a total earworm, even today. Like, it just gets stuck in your head. But what was it about that song that resonated so much, do you think?
I mean, it's the perfect storm. Musically, it blended that irresistible early 80s funk and disco fusion, but it also had a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was about taking your time, doing things right, both in love and in life.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that people could connect with on different levels.
Right. It wasn't just about dancing. It was about, something deeper. I can totally see how that would connect with people. So after this massive hit, I'm guessing things went into overdrive for the S.O.S. band.
Oh, absolutely. They were touring. Their name was everywhere. They were riding high on that success wave. But what's fascinating is that they didn't just settle, right? They were about to enter a whole new chapter. And it involved two names that you definitely know, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Whoa, wait a minute. We're talking about the masterminds behind Janet Jackson, New Edition. I mean, the list goes on and on, right?
Yeah.
How did those two get involved with the S.O.S. band?
Okay, so it's 1983. And Jam and Lewis, they were starting to make a name for themselves. They saw something special in the S.O.S. band. Yeah. And they took over as producers. But they didn't just tweak the sound, they kind of reimagined it, right? Like from the ground up.
Okay, so how did they reinvent the S.O.S. dance sound? What was their secret sauce?
Think about the early 80s, right? You've got big, bold sounds, lots of live instrumentation. But Jam and Lewis brought in these cutting-edge synthesizers. They layered those with punchy drum machines, and they kept those iconic vocal harmonies. But it was modern, it was sophisticated, but it still retained that S.O.S. band soul.
So they kind of bridged the gap between that old school vibe and this new wave of R&B,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So what were some of the standout tracks from this era?
Oh man, well, just Be Good to Me, absolute masterpiece of production. The bass line is legendary, those synths are so catchy, and Mary Davis's vocals just soar over it all. And then there's Tell Me If You Still Care, Weekend Girl. I mean, every song was a hit.
I can picture like people dancing in the clubs to those songs.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting because Just Be Good to Me, it has this vulnerability to it, even though it's got this big, bold production. It's like a plea disguised as this like dance floor anthem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Did that blend of emotion and those production choices, did that become like their signature sound?
I think so, yeah. They tapped into a feeling that resonated with people.
Yeah.
It's that balance of heartbreak and hopefulness set against just this backdrop of pure musical brilliance.
This is what I love about the S.O.S. band. They brought that raw emotion to the dance floor, right? It wasn't just about the beat. It was about feeling something real. So they've got this new sound, these mega hits. They're on top of the world, right? But as we all know, the music industry is like, it's like a Shark Tank, always hungry for the next big thing. How how did the SOS band navigate those choppy waters?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The late 80s, the late 80s brought some major shifts in the music scene. And the SOS band, they kind of found themselves at a crossroads.
Ooh, a crossroads. All right, well we're gonna have to pause there, but before we jump into that next chapter, I just want to take a moment to appreciate what they had already accomplished, right? I mean, they went from those early days in Atlanta to collaborating with some of the biggest names in music, creating a sound that still gets people moving today. It's amazing.
It really is. It's a testament to their talent, their vision, and their ability to adapt and evolve. But as you said, the music industry is always changing,
Yeah.
right? And that change was about to impact the SOS band in ways they probably couldn't have predicted.
All right, so we left off with the SOS band at a crossroads. The 80s were coming to a close. What were some of those big changes happening in music that were impacting their journey?
Well, you had hip hop exploding onto the scene, new jack swing was emerging, and tastes were definitely changing. That smooth, polished R&B sound that the SOS band had really perfected was starting to, face some serious competition.
It's like they say, adapt or die. How did they respond to all these new musical forces that were coming up?
Oh, they definitely tried to adapt. They experimented with different sounds,
Yeah.
brought in new producers, but it wasn't quite the same. And then on top of all that, there was a major internal shift that really changed everything. Mary Davis, she decided to go solo.
Wow, I can only imagine how that impacted the group. I mean, Mary Davis's voice, that was so integral to their sound. Was there any like tension or creative differences that led to her departure?
There were definitely some creative differences, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was also, it was a natural progression. Mary had been the voice of the SOS band for over a decade. She was ready to explore her own artistic vision. And it was a bold move for sure, but it kind of marked the end of an era for the band.
Yeah, I can see how losing such a powerful vocalist would be a huge challenge for any group. Did they keep going? Did the SOS band continue after Mary Davis left?
They did. They did. And they went through some lineup changes. They were trying to find their footing again in a rapidly evolving musical landscape. They continued to release music. But it's tough, it's tough to recapture that same magic without Mary. It wasn't for lack of trying though. They were still incredibly talented musicians. But the industry had moved on, and the audience, they had moved on to something new.
It's almost like they were caught in between these two eras of R&B, you know what I mean? So what happened to the original members? Did Mary Davis ever reunite with the SOS band?
There have been some reunions over the years, and those are special moments, for fans who'd been there from the beginning. But it's important to acknowledge that the music industry can be tough. Not every band gets that fairy tale ending.
That's true. But even if their chart-topping days were kind of behind them, we can't overlook the impact they had. You mentioned earlier that their sound, it continues to echo today. And I think that's a perfect segue to talk about their sampling legacy. A lot of listeners might not realize how influential the SOS band has been on modern music.
You're absolutely right. Their music has been sampled extensively in contemporary R&B and hip hop. Those infectious grooves, those unforgettable melodies, they've been woven into the fabric of some of today's biggest hits.
Okay, I need some examples. Like, we know about Mariah Carey's Honey. She sampled Just Be Good to Me,
Yeah.
right? But who else has, drawn inspiration from the SOS band's catalog?
Well, Usher's You Make Me Wanna heavily samples Tell Me If You Still Care. It's a brilliant example of how a classic melody can be reinterpreted for a new generation. And it's not just those mega hits. You've got Jay-Z, who sampled Weak Spot for Paper Chase.
Yeah.
And even Beyonce incorporated elements of Tell Me If You Still Care into her song Upgrade You.
Wow, okay, so that's a pretty impressive list, right? It really speaks to the timelessness of their music. Like, it's one thing to have a hit in your own era, but to have your music sampled and reinterpreted by artists across different genres decades later, I mean, that's a whole other level of influence.
It really is. It's like their music has taken on a life of its own. And it makes you wonder, what is it about the SOS band's sound that makes it so ripe for sampling?
That's a great question. What do you think it is?
I think it comes down to a few things. First, their melodies are incredibly catchy, right? They're so memorable. They stick in your head long after the song is over. Second, their grooves are infectious. You can't help but move to them, you know.
Mm.
And third, there's an emotional depth to their music that resonates with people, even when it's disguised as this dance floor banger. It's that combination of musicality and energy and raw emotion that makes their music so timeless and so sampleable.
You know, I've been listening to the S.O.S band for years, but
Uh,
this conversation has given me a whole new appreciation for their impact. It's not just about those iconic hits. It's about the way that their music has really like infiltrated the DNA of contemporary music.
exactly. It's like this musical ripple effect. Their sound just it continues to spread and inspire, even if the source isn't always obvious. It's fascinating how music can uh, transcend time and boundaries like that.
So we've talked about their journey, their sound, their legacy, but let's bring it back to the listener for a minute. If someone is hearing about the S.O.S band for the very first time, what are some like essential tracks they need to check out to really understand their sound?
Oh man, that's a tough one. There's so much good stuff to choose from, but I'd say start with take your time, do it right, to get a feel for their early found. Then jump into the Jam and Lewis era with Just Be Good to Me and Tell Me If You Still Care. Those three songs will give you a pretty solid foundation.
Solid choices. Now, for those of us who are already familiar with their hits, what's one hidden gem or deep cut that might surprise our listener?
Ooh, I'm really fond of No One's Gonna Love You from their On the Rise album. It's got these gorgeous vocal harmonies. It's a really smooth groove, and it really showcases their songwriting. It's a bit more laid back than some of their other hits, but it's a true gem.
I'm adding that to my playlist as we speak. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the SOS band's story, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I hope they come away with a deeper understanding of the SOS band's impact. They weren't just a flash in the pan. They were innovators. They were hit makers, and their music continues to inspire and influence artists today. They truly deserve their place in the R&B Hall of Fame.
Well said. And for our listener, I hope this deep dive has sparked a renewed appreciation for the SOS band's music, whether you're, a longtime fan or a newcomer to their sound. There's a reason their music has endured for all these years, and we hope you'll continue to explore their catalog and discover those hidden gems for yourself. It's crazy how much we've covered about the SOS band. I mean, we've talked about everything, right? We went from Atlanta to chart-topping success. We talked about how their sound evolved and even how they influenced like modern music. It's pretty amazing to think about. Their story's a lot bigger than just their hits, I think.
It really is. Their whole journey kind of reflects how R&B changed, right? From that classic funk and disco fusion sound to the whole like rise of synthesizers and drum machines and all that. And then the fact that their music has been sampled and reinterpreted by artists years later. I
Yeah.
mean, that just shows you how big their impact really was.
Yep. It makes you think about how music can connect different generations. Like
Yeah.
you might be listening to a song today that samples a track from decades ago and not even not even realize it. It's like this hidden thread, that runs through music history.
Yeah, I love that analogy of a hidden thread.
Oh.
And speaking of connections, I think it's interesting to think about where the SOS band fits into the whole Atlanta music scene. We all know Atlanta's always been this hub for musical innovation, right?
Mm.
But what was it about that time and place that produced so much talent?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like what were the key ingredients that made Atlanta such a breeding ground for music, especially back then?
Well, I mean, Atlanta had this incredibly vibrant club scene, right? Which was crucial for artists like the SOS band,
Yeah.
to hone their live performances, to really connect with audiences. It was also a city with a really rich musical history. I mean, they were drawing inspiration from soul, funk, gospel, jazz, all of it, right? And then you also had the rise of all these independent record labels in Atlanta, which gave opportunities to local artists to get their music out there.
So is this perfect storm of talent and venues and this entrepreneurial spirit that helped artists like the SOS band really take off, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if they could have like made it in any other city back then.
That's a really interesting thought. It's hard to say for sure, but Atlanta definitely played a crucial role in their story. It gave them, the environment, the support, the inspiration they needed to take their music, to the world.
And they did. They took it to the world. All right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message you want to leave our listener with? What should they remember about the SOS band?
I want them to remember the SOS band as innovators, as
Mhm.
artists who pushed the boundaries of R&B and created a sound that still resonates, today. And I hope that they'll continue to explore their music, dig deeper into their catalog and really discover the richness and depth of their artistry.
Beautifully said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to our listeners, if you haven't already, I mean, go put on some SOS band, turn it up, let yourself get swept away by their music. It's a musical journey you won't regret taking.
And if you're already a fan, I hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on their music and their legacy.
Exactly. I mean, we uncovered some hidden gems, right? Explored their influence and just gained a deeper appreciation for what they did, what they created, and who knows? Maybe you'll hear a sample of their music in a song you hear today and think, "Aha, there's that SOS band magic."
That's the beauty of music, right? It's
Ah,
always evolving. It's always connecting us. It's always surprising us.
well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of the SOS band. Until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep the music alive.